Welcome to the Pastors Podcast. This is Pastor Scott, and with me today are Pastors Reggie, Ara, and José.
Hello.
Hi.
Nailed it.
You did. That was it. We are continuing a theme from last week's podcast in just reflecting on the last 10 years. As we talked about on Sunday, we are celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the creation of Cornerstone, at least Cornerstone as we currently know it. Right? We don't want to downplay the fact that we are sitting in essentially a building with 100 years of history.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And brothers and sisters in Christ who even a part of that community dating back to 1901 and obviously back before that and before that. But in its current iteration, and I think actually in its current iteration for us, Cornerstone was the product of a merge 10 years ago when Reggie and José, you were both here.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes, we were.
Not pastors at the time, but you guys were both here. And Ara, you were not.
No.
You were in Iran at that time, right?
10 years ago, 2010.
2011.
I was in 1 year anniversary.
Oh,
in
so you
US.
just
being in the
gotten-
US.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And before, you'd come directly from Turkey. At that point, yeah?
Austria, Vienna. We were in Vienna for a few months, and then we came December 2009, 7 December 2009.
Okay. That's right.
So
Turkey was
almost,
when
yeah.
you were younger.
Yeah.
That's
was
right.
Passing.
So, and where did you, when you first came to the States, where did you?
Los Angeles.
Landed in Los Angeles.
Terangeles, actually.
as it is called.
That's great.
And I'm Armenian, so I arrive in Glendale.
You are a walking cliche. my friend.
And I said, where is white people? I want to see blonde. And all these Armenians.
I've heard stories.
I've been watching your television shows.
Yes.
And it looks a little different here.
It's like that
For
image
sure.
of Ara coming off the plane. All right, where are the white people at? And that's funny to me.
Well, so I wanted to take this opportunity to just reflect together a little bit on what the Lord's done over the last 10 years, right? How he's worked in our lives. I mean, when maybe we'll start with either of you, Reggie or José. You guys were a part of the church at that time. When you think back over the last 10 years, what are some of the pieces, you could talk church-wide or even just personally, that stand out to you?
Well, it's very interesting. 10 years ago, man, I cannot believe that.
Yeah.
It's time,
Right?
time flies.
We're getting old, man.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I remember. I mean, just by way of memory, starting the conversation. I remember we started having gatherings together. Between Wesley Baptist Church and Shoreline.
Yeah. Yep.
And I remember meeting over there at the missions house, and there was a picnic.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't even sure who the pastors were, and because, all white people look the same. That's what they say. No, that's not true. But yeah. So, well, the thing is that...
But we also, the entire church was, to be fair, the entire church was like within 5 years of each other age-wise at that point.
Oh,
so,
wow.
so it wasn't like, super distinguishable.
Yeah.
Anyways, we were in the backyard and we were having a picnic. And I remember, that there was not that many food left over. And then there was, I got some, and then this last guy came in and he didn't have food. And then I offered him some of my chicken, and then I realized it was Brian. and then I learned that Brian usually eats last. That was the first indication of, well, I like this guy. So that was my first contact with one of the pastors.
Brian always eats last. Scott always eats first.
The last shall be first.
That's right.
Because you're making sure the food is kosher for
It's-
Brian.
That's right. So, okay, at that point, were you in seminary yet?
No, I was not in seminary.
You weren't even in seminary
I was not
yet.
in seminary. I was teaching the college and careers group
Okay.
as when the merger starts. And no, I was just practicing architecture,
Yeah.
doing my own thing
Yeah.
and teaching. college and careers group. That was the extent of my involvement with the church.
Man, you look back 10 years, you're like, at that point, you had no idea what was ahead.
I had no idea.
Yeah. And you had been at the church for a while, right? Because
I've been in the church.
You got here in the
1991.
80s, right? Oh, 91?
90,
Okay.
Well, I visited in 86.
Okay. Oh, okay.
86, 87, something like that. 87.
I don't remember
How
if we
you
told the story.
survive.
I don't remember if we told the story
Yeah.
yet, but we may have.
Yeah.
So you visited
I visited.
and you didn't stay.
I didn't stay. And a friend of mine invited me. I don't know if you want me to elaborate.
No,
a little bit.
it's okay. Actually, we go. But so you 91, and you'd been in the church for a long time. What, when we look back at the last 10 years, what was it that led you to say, okay, yeah, I have this architecture practice, and I should go to seminary?
Well, that's a good question. I thought, I'm doing architecture. I'm teaching the college and careers group, and then something happened. My brother, my older brother, who is a pastor, he came from Guatemala, and he told me, "Do you know that you have a call in your life?" And I said to him, "Yeah, I know." And I knew since I was 17 that God had called me to be a pastor, but I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to be an architect. And he told me, "Well, if you don't answer the call, you are never going to be truly happy." And that stayed in my mind. And I stayed in my mind. And that was about this just after the marriage that happened. And then, God, I have to come clean with you. Do you want me? Are you calling me? Right? And I pray and yeah, it was very obvious. I knew. And I have told Becky even before we got married. I said, "You know what? I just want you to know that God might call me to the ministry, so you know that you might be marrying a potential pastor, right?" So anyways, after that, I asked Becky, and Becky told me, yeah, I know. So you need to
I know. She said, I know.
Yeah.
I saw it before you did.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like now
for sure.
Now you have to go to seminary. Oh, okay.
That's so cool. And I love the fact that, like, I know we've been doing pastor testimonies, and we'll get to Jose's, and I'm sure that'll be part of it. But just the idea of, like, you doing architecture first, being both you plugging your ears, not listening to the call, and be like, "No, but I want to be an architect," and so you're doing that, but also being a blessing. Because you know how much of a blessing it's been to have an architect around Hello Sanctuary renovations, like all of this stuff, to be like, "Oh, here's Jose," to be able to completely, I mean, the outdoor sanctuary, all that stuff, like to see how God used that first to help the church, like is super cool.
Hey, and it makes me think of I think sometimes there's this assumption, right, that, okay, so the pastors are leading the church, so that means they dream up what it should look like.
Right.
Or what new programs we should have, or how it should go. And then I guess we all just kind of follow the pastor, which I think is this backwards view of leadership. Even headship. I think this will actually apply to families too. This is a whole nother, but like our job all along is simply to both follow Christ step by step and point others to Christ step by step. And I mean, I've talked about before, I think we talked about last week, like the merge wasn't a part of my 10-year plan. It's like came out of nowhere, and the Lord, and even when it did, it didn't sound like a good idea. Like the Lord was like obviously building something that was so much greater and bigger than I could imagine. Yeah. And in the same way, I think there's this like proud strategic version of the story where people are like, "Oh, okay, so you merged, and then you decided that you needed a Spanish ministry, and so somebody asked Jose to go to seminary." No, like the Lord was doing. The Lord was building something. He had planted seeds in your heart. He was using your brother to affirm your wife, to affirm things that even those of us around you, even your own pastors, hadn't fully seen or didn't understand what the Lord was doing yet. And just step by step, I can't imagine our church not the way it is structured now. But what's fascinating is 10 years ago, I mean, I don't think any of us saw or imagined what the Lord had ahead, which is part of what's so exciting, both looking back and exciting and comforting looking forward. This is what the Lord does.
And something else that God did is that after I graduated from seminary, I got invited to go how do you call that when you try to be a pastor?
Candidate.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
To candidate for another church.
Candidate is a pastoral word for like interview.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was candidating, and in my mind, because there's 3 pastors, there's Jim, there is 4 pastors. There's no way I'm going to be a pastor here. So
They've already got plenty.
Exactly. Yeah. So it never dawned on me that I was going to be a pastor here. My mind, I didn't have that category.
Yeah.
So I started doing what was normal, and then later, things started developing differently.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and each a step of the way, right? I think all of us. I mean, I remember making that step and us deciding together, but like taking that step, it was like I don't know if we have room for another pastor.
Yeah,
but even right in a lot of different ways, but including budgetarily, like we didn't know like if we could do this. Well, let's just take a step at a time and see what the Lord's doing, and He just I mean, made a.
Yeah, I think I was more surprised than you guys.
It's funny. I feel like that was the whole process. Just felt like that. Just felt like step by step, rather than a more deliberate, like purposeful, years thought out kind of planned for. It was just like
perfect execution of a 10-year plan or something.
Yeah. It was just like it wasn't that at all. Like everything about. Like even the fact that our church, I can't remember if Jim mentioned this last time, but like just the way that our church was structured, and we had to like redo our constitution, and that was a whole big thing that was involved to get that changed, dissolving boards and moving to an elder-run model, so like just all the different like parts of that, let alone the merge itself, and I remember the whole step of the way because we got here. Around 2007, 2008-ish, something like that.
Okay. Was that when you moved to LA?
We moved to LA in 2005.
Okay.
So we church shopped for like a good almost 2 years. Bounced around like over a dozen different churches.
If you're doing that right now, you're in good company.
Yes.
Reggie and Nicole do too.
Absolutely. Like,
and then you end up here.
Find your. And then we found the right.
As long as you end up here, right? It's okay.
God intended for you to no. So we shopped for a while, and then finally found our way here. And for a few years, it was like we loved this church. The teaching was great. We very much felt home here. But then those years, so by the time we got here around 2007. To 2010 or so, there was a lot of change, a lot of upheaval that was going on at First Baptist. Jerry Wilkie, who was the pastor here at the time when we arrived, he retired. And then like Jim stepped in as sort of the interim senior pastor, kinda. We also had somebody come in as like to preach on Sundays, sort of ad hoc each week.
Yep.
Shout out R.W. Mackey.
Mackey. W. Mackey.
He was great.
We didn't have a pastor, right?
Yeah, for a while. We just didn't have a pastor, and just figuring out like what are we doing, and just it was just a very somewhat chaotic time. I mean, not crazy. It was okay, but it was definitely difficult.
Yeah.
And then sort of in the face of that, to all of a sudden just hear about here's this church Shoreline, and let's talk and whatever. And Nicole and I actually went to Shoreline. And that's when we first met people because we attended a service there since we knew that this was sort of in the works. And it was like, I wish I could remember who we saw there at the time. It was funny to think now that was 10 years ago. And just even, I feel like just children alone. Like, so right? You know what I mean? It's just like, like at the time, at the time of the merge, we had one kid and she was a baby, basically. Adina was one or so. Yeah. 1 or 2, and it's just like to now see there are people who not only didn't have kids, they weren't even married. Like just all sorts of just life, how much life grows and changes and evolves, is just awesome to see. So like getting to meet the few guys that we met and seeing how, because it was a step-by-step process, feeling God in each step. Even as each step was met with somewhat resistance from some people who were anxious about, the change of the Constitution or just the merge itself or whatever. And some people left, some people were upset, some people stayed, some people left. Like it was all sorts of whatever. But it really felt just like, well, at the end of the day, is God in this? Okay. Then that's sort of where Nicole and I were at. Because it's just like, that's what we're going to do. This seems very much God led. Let's keep walking down that path and see what happens. And boy, look what happened.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then, Ara, what year was it that we met? Do you remember? You don't remember. Oh, we've had these conversations before.
I think 2005.
What?
2015, sorry.
Yeah, I was like 2005.
No, 2015.
No, don't tell that story.
I was in Iran 2005.
I know. Don't tell it.
Say it for your
I.
testimony.
Okay, so 2015, right? So it was only a few years
in.
later
Yeah.
that we got connected, and I mean, and at that point, I mean, you've been a part of numerous churches here in the States, visited numerous churches, obviously back in Iran and in
Different
between and in
countries.
Turkey and in between. Like, what is it that's stood out to you about, I don't know, just the story of our church family over the last, I guess, 6 years since
Yeah.
you showed up?
So you know the story, like when I arrived in Glendale. So after 1 week, I started a church called Armenian Fellowship Church of Burbank,
Mhm.
and so I started preaching gospel to Armenians as Iranian Armenian born in Iran, and the majority of population was Armenian. And one day I was preaching, because usually I serve among Iranian churches in Turkey, England, and different countries and inside of Iran, but I end up in this city that majority of Armenian lives. And one day I was preaching, and I look at my preaching sermons. It was Farsi. Writing was Farsi, and then in main time I was translating to Armenian, preaching to Armenian, and I said, wait a minute, like, why I'm preaching Armenian when I'm writing in Farsi? So then I start like praying and seeing how God is want me to do, and I start walking around Westwood area and praying for almost few years and seeing how God, and I knew as a church planter, like I need people to come alongside of me. I can't do it alone. I did different churches alone, and I got exhausted and gave up. So and I said, Lord, bring people. And usually in my experience, based on my experience on ministry, usually the language group, language churches, even in the US, is like kind of extra ministry under the ministry of English speakers.
Mhm.
Like we have, for example, we have Spanish, we have like Pakistani or Arabic. So there are extra ministry, small portion of ministry. It's not significant part of what we are. So usually I got avoided, or I felt as a outsider usually in the church and ministry, and then is less important than other ministry, less important than other even ministers or pastors. So I got that defending, as you know, for a while we go through lots of conversation based on my experience, and
Well, so I don't mean to interrupt you, but it sticks out to me. I guess I do mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, but that time sticks out to me because I think similarly to how each part of the way, right? Whether it was, any of us not being able to imagine what the Lord had in store and following Him each step of the way, even when we started talking, even as you had a Bible study here and you were meeting here and our relationship was growing, you still couldn't see it.
No.
Like you're like, no, this doesn't work well. I've seen it. I don't want to be your, token Iranian. I don't want to be this little ministry that makes you feel good, but that doesn't actually get any priority. And there was a relationship that I grew, and I think we both discovered that the Lord had something in store that was greater even than either of us imagined at the time.
Even like Scott, I've been in different stages, front of hundreds and thousands of people. For example, they brought us there as a pastor or church planter that reaching Muslim, which is kind of priority or very attractive for Christians and churches and ministries. And then I've been in that stages that people start clapping, thousands of people, like Pastor pick me up and okay, come here, we pay for your hotel or flight. And then I I went stage and talk about how God is doing among Muslim people, and then they start clapping, and that's it. And I said, wait a minute, okay, they don't call me, they don't talk to me, only just I'm there just to be a face of God is doing amazing things, but in the meantime, there's no relationship,
Hmm.
no communication, no like a church that I'm seeing in the Bible. So that all these things, I got very bitter inside, and it was like process of healing for me
Hmm.
in Cornerstone, because it was many years. And when I started, as you know, we started with, even the name was Grace Iranian Church.
Yeah.
So, and then after a while, like the first thing that I did, I talked to Pastor Jose. I said, how this guys is treating you.
Are they for real? Are they the real thing?
So Pastor Jose really, like, that's a relationship, because already was there, and what you're saying, like step by step. So if there is no Pastor Jose, how can I know it? Like, how do you know you guys? And I talked to him, I got a little bit relaxed, but then because of this bitterness and I need some healing inside of me. And then I talk and wait and see how God is doing. And in the meantime, God, like, I see people from Iranian church, how you guys treat them. And I said, oh, wait a minute, there is like different people here, different. And always, this is my testimony from Cornerstone. I said, one of the like, maybe some people is hearing this is like second church, third church, but I love the church in whole. But Cornerstone was very different, very different, based on my 20 years church ministry in different countries. Like, I really believe that God wants to do amazing thing through Cornerstone, and after like 2 years, like wrestling and talking or testing or whatever you want to say, it's just not my decision. It's just God. Like, if it was my decision, it's just not.
It will not
but
happen.
it's just like God, like naturally, and it's just biblically, and based on what is truth, and in his words, just connect us to each other. When, like, I was seeing downstairs, my wife is waiting downstairs, so with the kids, I saw my wife is talking to Dustin and his family. It's just beautiful. And I saw like Majid was helping Brian for the
Right,
kids,
yeah.
sleeping the kids in the Iranian hand.
He
So
was,
he's a safe.
he was holding a sleeping baby,
baby.
and she comes over and like basically pulls the baby out of Brian Dillard's hands.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, no, I've got this.
I got
Like,
this.
just
Yeah.
a little like toe-headed,
That's
maybe she's like,
awesome.
and it's just,
Yeah, and I feel this is not extra ministry for Cornerstone.
no,
This is we are in one, and for me, being from senior pastor to be like in a group of pastors, which is so different for me, and I learn a lot. And so I said, this is the best place I can be. And trust me, that's after 20 years of serving. This is my first time that I'm full time. Always our work, struggle, serve hard. and and I said, this is the time after 20 years. Always I said, Lord, if I want to be full time in ministry, please take me somewhere that I can stay and help and church plans and teach. And it just took me 20 years to be here. And this is like a really, for me, maybe 20 years is too much, but it's just step by step, and God work on my character, work on my experience, ministry, teaching, and all these things that in last 5 years we are working like peacefully and helpfully. Like,
Yeah.
usually anytime that I work with the group of pastors, usually after 1 year there is something they have to fight each other.
I mean, let's not paint too picture of it. We do argue at times.
Yes,
Scott,
especially with Pastor Matt. Kleines Pastor Matt.
But it is cool to see like the step-by-step nature of things and to see how God orchestrates these between, and even in the evolution, specifically with like the Spanish language and Farsi language parts of our church. Like at first it was Nueva Vida, and at first it was Grace Iranian, and I feel like even we learned, I think, as a church to move them from like a ministry and like a viable, good ministry to like they are part of us, not in word or whatever, just something to say, but like, no, they really are. Like, so we changed, so now it's named, so it's like, it's Cornerstone Espanol now, and Cornerstone Farsi, like it's one church. Even small things like the fact that on the campus, wherever it's written, like sanctuary, community building, it's all 3 languages. Yeah. It's English, Spanish, and Farsi, because, and I don't know, for those who may or may not know, those languages are 3 of the most spoken languages in Los Angeles, which is,
and particularly
like,
in West LA.
And especially in West LA. So
and we had those even before Ara came, right?
We did actually.
Yeah.
Did we put the Farsi up before?
Yes.
We did.
Get out of here.
This was probably like 8 years ago. We had done like a survey of the neighborhood and recognized that the 3 most populous languages other than English, and because this is a very multilingual city
Community,
generally
sure.
and area in particular,
Right.
but the 3 most were Spanish, Mandarin, and Farsi.
Yep.
And so
Wow.
We put we had them translated and put them up at that point. I think it was Abe Serrano's idea, actually. It was. Anyways, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Always, like, I struggle with the banner in the churches that they host us as a ministry. Like, can you put your language group is smaller, you have to put a little bit, or, only on Sunday. But when I arrived here and I saw all these Farsi words, and I said, already they put banner for us. We don't need to argue with how big or small should be, where we should put. Already all over the church. So,
and again,
awesome.
that's God. And it's the Lord. It is. Like there's so many ways that you could tell this story in a way that like feels impressive, but it just makes me feel really small and really kind of like simple, right? Like, okay, Lord, like we're just going to try to be faithful one step at a time, and He surprises us in every step of the way. Like you said, if it was my choice, it wouldn't have gone like this, and it wouldn't have gone well. But the Lord has been doing things incredibly special.
Yeah, and I remember that the name changed from Grace Iranian or Nueva Vida. Yeah. It happened because we were struggling with unity to not that we didn't have, but we I guess God is relentless in our pursuit for unity. And I think it was you, Scott, who started saying, what can we do? I think you brought it up to the table, and the idea was to see how we can be also unified. What God was doing through us physically and spiritual here, it was time to reflect it in the naming. So
and that's part of your story too, Reg. I mean, we've talked about this in your testimony, but 10 years ago,
very much not a pastor.
Yeah, very much not a pastor. I'm not quite sure what that means, but I mean,
I'm sorry. I just heard the way that that could sound. Yeah. That's for the second half of my testimony story. Right. No. It's just that was not something on my radar at all. Like, and at least in any real way. I had the thought like in passing when I was younger. Yeah. But it was just like, that's not me. That's for those guys. And it's funny because I feel like that it fosters this sense of like, you think about this podcast, right? Where everyone's listening to us, this pastor's podcast here at Cornerstone, that like, I remember before I was a pastor, like looking to pastors and being like, oh, those are the ones who have it all together. those are the holiest of the holy. Those are the ones who, cast vision and completely map everything in such a way. And like, that was how I kind of thought. And like sitting here with you all now and having been a pastor for the past 3 years here and like realizing why, yes, all of us are looking to pursue holiness. All of us are looking to follow hard after Christ. We are just as reliant as you non-pastors, if not more so. This is not our doing. This is not anything that we have brought about. So it was amazing. It was amazing to see the progression of Cornerstone over the past 10 years, both as a layperson. That's a very weird layperson's a weird term.
It's a weird word. Weird. Yeah, I wish we had a better one.
Something. It's very bizarre. So before I was a pastor, to see how the church went and grew and all of that, to even now being a pastor and to see it grow and learn, and like just all the things that God is doing really is just amazing to watch.
I mean, I'll tell you what, I may have mentioned this last week, I don't remember, but to me, it gives me a lot of hope and encouragement because when I look back on the last 10 years, I'm just in awe. When I look forward to the next 10 years, it makes me a little nervous. To be honest, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. The Lord continues to do like a little work, and I'm kind of like, I don't know, like I don't know how to. I feel just as dependent now, if not more so, than I did 10 years ago. And then there's this temptation to be like, oh, okay, now we just read this. But the reality is, like, and we talk about continuing to grow as a unified body, right? Because the Lord has done these amazing things. We're also not perfect yet. We haven't arrived. Like, there's still lots of work to do. There's lots of questions about how God is going to continue to grow us, how He's going to reach. The West LA we're reaching now. In some ways there's a lot of similarities, but I increasingly feel like it is a fundamentally different place than 15 years ago when I moved here to plant a church. There's so many dynamics that are different, and it does sometimes leave me saying, okay, how are we going to do this? But it brings so much hope because step by step, following the Lord. And you know what? Just like I couldn't imagine it then, the exciting thing is I can't imagine it now, right? That God has these things in store, and it's not all going to be easy, right? Like just like the last 10 years, there's going to be parts of it that are really hard and but beautiful and redemptive, and there's going to be all sorts of new things and transformation and growth that He has. I mean, when you guys think about the next 10 years, right? When you kind of look back and look forward, and I know I just said that we can't imagine it, but like, what are the things that excite you about the things that you do see the Lord doing as you look, in the years?
For me, is because we live in California and Los Angeles, there's the ocean. So for me,
you want to go to the beach more in the next 10 years? Resolution.
It's God intended.
Yes, if you have Airbnb for rent, we are going to do it. So I'm when I'm seeing like next 10 years, it just kind of for me, the first time that I see surfer, it was in California. I never see a surfer before, so I think next 10 years, I want to tell myself. And I'm trying to remind myself that Ara, as a church and ministry, and next 10 years is like an ocean, and we are the surfer, and that there is ups and downs. Like I personally, scared from ocean with the waves. I never swim. I know how to swim in the water, but ocean, no way, I'm not going there. But when I'm seeing all these waves is coming, I think the church is like an ocean. You have very calm, you have like wavy, big waves and all this stuff. So like I'm seeing next 10 years that I'm a surfer, and I want to enjoy like that surfer. The surfer is not scared from big waves, ups and down. And I'm saying, like, Ara, next 10 years, you need to enjoy it with big waves, with calm, and ask God to help me to be a good surfer. Ask you, like, okay, it's going to be, how is it like last 1 year? We never imagined the corona will hit us like that. And we would never imagine like we are ready to do in-person service and flood. But like we enjoy it. We enjoy experiencing and how God is changing our character, not be very comfortable and just trusting Lord and trusting our surfboard and how God is teaching us in the experience of doing all this surfing. We enjoy. I think that for me is I'm ready to face anything with enjoying that God is with us and God is going to help us to enjoy anything with Him.
Fair warning, I'm going to steal that analogy at some point when I preach next, I think. That's because that's so good and that's so right. And I think it really speaks to it, or highlights how much we like the opposite. We want like lazy river. We want everything to just smooth and like there's nothing's gonna happen. It's just gently gliding by whatever. And that's not life. That's not what God is at work doing. Part of His work involves, a gentle, rapids or whatever. Part of it involves huge waves. Part of it involves like suddenness of change of the water. But like it really is that sense. I mean, the verse that's cropping to mind is in this world you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. And so just the idea of like, enjoy it. Enjoy it. It's like, there's going to be so many awesome times. There's also going to be some really dark times, some really hard ones, but He is always there. And I feel like just the idea of like to impress upon our hearts as pastors and upon every single member and attender of this church is calling that to mind purposefully, deliberately, as we go about our days, is that He is with us. He is always with us. Look at what He's done. Look at what He's done in this church in the past 10 years. Look at what He's done in your life in the past 10 years. Whether things have been hard or easy or good or bad, like anything, He is always with you. And just that focus, just continuously reflecting and meditating on that and allowing that to carry you through difficult times and enjoy all the more the good times, that reminder of His constant presence, like that's really, really good.
Absolutely. What about you, Jose?
Yeah, I've been listening, and it's just beautiful to hear all these things. And as you were saying, Reggie, that there is suffering and there is joy, right? And what that means for us elders, there's more dying that I need to do. We all need to do. But in the process of that dying, we get used more by God, and there's more joy and peace in us. So it's the beautiful things about the kingdom of God that He uses us by His grace, by His will, to do His work. Yet there is something as well for also everybody who's a believer, that there is that freedom and that joy and that peace that comes with it. So I mean, to put it in practical terms, I can wait to see the Mandarin preacher.
I was going to say that. I was like, oh man, who? Yeah. Scott had the foresight to help us come up with the name Community Building over there, and it's pretty empty. But I want to see it full of activities for the glory of God, where God will use that building. I mean, it's going to be great. I mean, just look back, right? Let's look back what He has done. And He could have done with anybody of us. I mean, it doesn't have to be us, right? He could have done it with anybody, but by His grace, He chose us. It's going to get better by His grace, and better, and dying is better. Dying to self, to my will, and to what we like and what we want. Might even been there, right? It will get better. We have a good God. We have a gracious God. And I mean, just hearing you know, that you never imagined you were going to have a place, Ara, where you're going to have a full salary. And
and some of us have heard our personal testimony how he was treated here in our country, unfortunately, by some people, some of them pastors, and that God is redeeming that here. It's amazing, and we're not perfect, but you know what? But God, we have the desire to do it right, and that desire has been placed in us by God. So,
and also not only like pastors, I really appreciate each members, like
Yeah.
which is
Yes.
significant role of me to be here right now, because not only the pastors, because sometimes pastors nice, but members is not. They don't like. But Cornerstone,
well said.
Not you
well
guys.
said.
Not you.
But
But
Cornerstone,
not our church, exactly.
like,
Other people.
Other members. Not
Cornerstone
members.
Cornerstone members, I just want to say thank you so much. I love you guys. Even maybe I don't know personally each of you, but I love you so much because you accept us as a language group people is part of you. So I really appreciate that.
Man, this conversation just fills me with hope. Like, it fills me with excitement, and honestly, just peace. Because I think when we look at these things from our perspective, and like, well, how are we gonna do? I mean, in the last 6 months, I've like stressed out about like how are we? What's the next step for the community building, and like how are we gonna fill that? What is it? And
God's like, oh, hang on. Sploosh.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll speed this up.
Yeah, and every step of the way, right? Like there's no need for the angst. There is need for the fervent prayer, right? Like turn to him, like ask him. Be the what was it? The annoying neighbor, or what's the parallel?
Persistent.
Persistent.
Yeah.
That's right. The persistent widow. Right? Like annoying neighbor.
They'll change it to annoying.
No, I was
there's
thinking
one.
of,
There's
I was
one
thinking of the parable
with the
where he
bread.
waits,
He's
the bread,
asking for bread.
Yeah, he
Yes.
asks us for bread at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh no!
Yes.
No, it's the proverb. It's the proverb of the one who blesses the one who blesses his neighbor rising early in the morning shall be counted a cursing. Is what it. And so I always picture this picture of like the neighbor outside being, I love Reggie. He is my favorite. He has been just such a blessing. But if I'm outside of your window at 3 a.m. doing this, it doesn't matter how nice the things I say are.
Right.
The
Not a
context makes it a cursing. So anyways, there's a lot. There's a lot to apply there. But I'm sorry, I'm mixing up my parables and proverbs.
That's right.
But regardless, it brings me such hope. Not only because of what he's going to do, like, it's going to be exciting what he does in us together, relationally, organizationally, the church family. Jose, you highlighted it as well. It gives me a lot of hope for what he's going to do in my heart, in our hearts. That I know that there's still a lot of work to do.
Oh yes.
Right. And
all of us.
and
yes.
he's so kind to us, to gently, but persistently continue to sanctify us, continue to expose our sin, continue to apply the salve of his grace, and to lead us forward, both in ways that you could tell stories about like this, but also in so many more ways that don't even fit in a story, but they're just these small step-by-step turns toward him. That is just, if not actually, is more exciting for what he has in store. And to your point too, Ara, not just for us, not for this isn't just what he does for pastors. Right? This is what he has in store for all of us as a church family as we navigate and walk this journey together. So, well, thank you guys for taking the time. Thanks for the opportunity. I mean, I love hanging out whenever we get to, and getting to record it. It just makes it a little extra fun. But I'm thankful for you guys. I'm thankful for the ways the Lord has orchestrated our lives and hearts and ministries together in this moment, and for how he's going to continue to lead us as we go forward. And just as Ara said, thank you to all those of you who are listening. We do love you, and this is your story. And all the ways that you reflect on what he's done in the last 10 years, that is what that's the story of Cornerstone.
Hmm.
That's the story of what he's been doing here the last 10 years. These are just kind of snippets and highlights from our perspectives, but so much of what he's done in your heart is the story of that we have this opportunity to tell. So I would encourage you, ask these questions of each other. Take time out this week, take time out this month to ask, like I mentioned on Sunday, ask one another in your community group, among your friends, hey, let's just stop and ask, what's the Lord done over the last 10 years? And let's just revel in his glory as we prepare for whatever he has ahead as well. So thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of the family with us. We love you, and we'll see you on Sunday.